I've been a journalist for 15 years, and this is my first piece of fiction. I've never read my fiction before, so thank you to LPR for giving me the false hope at this late age that I can start to become a fiction writer. I appreciate it. So we meet the main character, Isabel, and she is, I'm just going to read a portion, I'm not going to read the whole piece. It's called Danish Modern. And when we meet her, she's standing on the sidewalk with a diaper bag abandoned on the ground, and she's holding a cinder block. Isabel wondered how long it would take for the police to arrive. 5 minutes, 15. It depended on the store's security system, she supposed. A silent alarm would be nice because then the racket wouldn't disturb her, although she'd become quite adept at tuning out noise, conversation, TV, crying. What she wanted was right there in the window, a mere 6 feet away. Have nothing in your house that you do not know to be useful or believe to be beautiful. So said William Morris, according to a quote cross-stitched onto a hideous and uncomfortable throw pillow in her mother's living room, the irony obvious to Isabel even at the age of 10. Nothing was as useless as a throw pillow, and her mother had scores, lining a down-filled sofa so deep that you couldn't sit up straight no matter how hard you tried. The cushions sank under your weight and pulled your butt backwards and your legs upward so that you looked like a mollusk trying to escape its shell. Perplexed house guests attempted not to spill afternoon tea while being swallowed by furniture, having no place to set their cup. Her mother's tchotchke assaulted every flat surface. A menagerie of ceramic animals marched across the sideboard. End tables teemed with chinoiserie jars and crystal candlestick holders, devoid of candles, and replica yellowware vases. Plastic maidenhair ferns filled brass buckets atop full-to-bursting cupboards. Every little box, jar, vase, and drawer held something more, something smaller. Coins, matchsticks, marbles, pebbles, beach shells. The house was a Russian doll, opening, until you felt like a tiny speck of plasma trapped inside all those layers. Maybe her father hadn't up and disappeared after all. Maybe he'd simply opened the wrong closet. Isabel had extricated herself after college and lived gloriously alone and clutter-free until Jim came back to her house one night for a limoncello. A few months later, he took her to a trendy Chinese restaurant near the theater district in D.C. on a surprise weekend getaway. She ordered dumplings and a shiso broth because the dish sounded simple and exotic. A glistening, fist-sized lump arrived, leaden and white and drowning in a tasteless brown broth, not at all what she'd envisioned. She debated returning it, but that would draw attention to herself or admit to Jim that she had flubbed the order. She extricated piece after piece of the doughy mass with her chopsticks, felt it expand in her stomach like insulation foam, while Jim shoveled kung pao chicken in his mouth with the fork and exclaimed over and over again, "Isn't this fantastic?" Later, after the musical, after the cordials, after the chocolate torte at the lobby bar, she rallied and made the most of the Weston signature heavenly bed. More furniture suffering an overdose of pillows and down like fucking in meringue. Several weeks later, with another white lump expanding inside her, she would remember that meal and go hurtling for the tiny toilet in Jim's tiny row house. When she finally emerged, there was Jim, smiling like the Cheshire Cat, hand reaching for her belly. "Isn't this fantastic?" Jim didn't see the point in buying a couch, not when he had a perfectly good hand-me-down from his mother. Isabel tried hiding the blue and gray gingham with store-bought white slipcovers, but the proportions were all wrong, too tight on the bloated armrests and too loose on the cushions. A custom-fit cover cost too much halfway to a new sofa, so why bother? Besides, Jim said, no use buying something just for it to become one giant burp cloth. Piles of laundry now buried her Parsons table, and her Paul Macabre dresser sold for a loss on eBay in favor of an armoire for Jim's sweaters and socks. Isabel aspired to knit organic rompers for the dumpling, handmade and soft to the touch and muted colors like wheat and oatmeal. But instead she had baskets of secondhand clothes, garish made-in-China neon onesies emblazoned with cartoon animals captioned by Mama's Little Monkey and Daddy's Girl. Was the rainforest jumperoo beautiful? Was the Tickle Me Elmo useful? Each morning she vowed to vanquish the clutter, but let's face it, babies come with infrastructure, and the dumpling was winning. In the evening after the dumpling finally passed out and before Jim got home from work, Isabel poured a glass of wine and flipped through home magazines. Her architectural porn, Jim called it. She liked to imagine that she lived the kind of life that inspired the articles. The foyer affords a startling reveal to the mammoth living room beyond, which boasts floor-to-ceiling windows and original Hans Wegner wishbone chairs discovered at a vintage boutique in Montauk. Isabel didn't have a foyer. There was no reveal in a row home. There was only the front door opening smack into the living room, and if swung too heartily, smack into the gingham couch. She clipped images of rooms she loved and glued them into a moleskin sketchbook. Bright, airy spaces with whitewashed walls and exposed beams, and ceramic bowls filled with clementines. An Eva Zeisel tea service on a teak dining table, or a glass coffee carafe ringed by ceramic mugs, suggested the homeowners who lived just off camera. But the rooms she clipped were devoid of people. People were messy. She always kept an eye out for her sofa. She'd seen many that she liked, B&B Italia, Blue Dot, vintage Arnie Jacobson, but nothing quite like the one. She'd spotted it years before in a coffee table book on Scandinavian design, and had she known she'd have such difficulty finding it again, she would have shelled out the outrageous cover price. She had all been given up on finding it again, and then she saw it. It. Tonight. Glowing bright white in a window as she drove home from her fiesta-themed book club meeting, half in the bag because Pico de Gallo did nothing to stave off the effects of tequila shots. Unlike the boxy gingham at home, this sofa was long and lean, a marathon runner. A clean, rectilinear box sliced in half, clad in nubby cotton fabric and held aloft by elegant tapered teak legs. 4 tufted cushions lined the backrest. She guessed it wouldn't fit in the row house, and with a price tag of $9,500, it never would. All she wanted was to crawl inside that store, lie down on that firm, clean couch and pretend it was hers, just for 5 minutes. Maybe take a nap. The cinder block dug into her palms.